Father!
Get in and do them dishes, son.
My pleasure, sir.
Some games are forgotten because they were bad, others because they got too close to greatness and missed. Giant Citizen Kabuto wasn't just another shooter. It was a Frankenstein of wild ideas, genre blending, real-time strategy, character switching, full 3D movement, and stuff most games wouldn't attempt for another decade. And it had the team to do it. Veterans from MDK, building their own engine, trying to push PC hardware as far as it would go. But somewhere along the way, that ambition outgrew the hardware, the budget, maybe even the era itself. And what we got wasn't a disaster, it was a vision half realized, a broken masterpiece. A game that feels like a message from the future, sent through a dial-up modem. Today, we're not just remembering Giants, we're digging into what it tried to be, because even if it didn't change the industry, it came a lot closer than most people ever realized.
You lads mind helping me rescue Timmy? For I'm just an old man, plus me balls are soggy.
This is Jake's Save Room, where we're building a vault, one video at a time, for the games that slip through the cracks, not just the classics, but the strange ones, the bold ones. The ones that made you stop and go, what was this? This series, the Oddities Room, is where we keep the weird ones. Games that didn't fit their time. Games that never got a sequel. Games that felt like experiments wrapped in plastic. And Giant Citizen Kabuto might be the biggest, weirdest one I've done so far.
There was this really beautiful, smarty woman. We know! Now let's get back to bourgeoisie.
Giant Citizen Kabuto is a third-person shooter with real-time strategy elements, and it was the debut project for Planet Moon Studios, a team of ex-Shiny developers who previously worked on MDK. After nearly 4 years in development, it launched on PC in late 2000, followed by a Mac port and a heavily scaled-back PlayStation 2 version in 2001. The PS2 version is the one I had as a kid. It's very janky, stripped down, and technically the weakest release. But it's the one that stuck with me. So for this video, I played through both, the full PS2 version for the memory, and the PC version to finally see what this game was really trying to be. Because while the missions are the same, the experience isn't. And to really understand Giants, its ambition, and the collapse, I had to see both sides. The game splits its campaign across 3 completely different characters. You start out as the Macarians, basically British space marines with jetpacks and these crazy weapons. Then you switch to the Sea Reapers, a kind of magical sea-dwelling warrior race with magic spells and bow and arrows. And finally, you take control of a creature like Kabuto, the giant monster. You only ever control one character at a time, and that's on purpose. The developers at Planet Moon wanted to keep the action up close and personal, less micromanaging, more weird stuff happening directly in front of you. And while each faction plays completely different, the controls stay mostly consistent across the board, with a few tweaks for special abilities and movement. The campaign itself is mission-based, with objectives ranging from blowing up enemy bases to protecting these little alien guys called Smarties. Some missions are simple, go here, kill this, but others throw in clumsy platforming or escort objectives that are a lot more frustrating than they probably sounded on paper.
That was a bit more powerful than expected.
You can play in third person or first person, but third is the default, and honestly that's where the game feels most functional. Then there's the strategy layer, sorta. The mechs and Reapers have limited base building mechanics tied to the Smarties, who function as both workers and resources. You round them up, feed them meat or souls if you're the Reaper, and they'll build structures for you. But you can't really pick where the buildings go or manage much beyond bring this here. It's not strategy in the traditional sense, more like guided setup. Kabuto's section drops the base building entirely. He just hunts, eats, and grows. You feed him Smarties to level up, Vimps to stay alive, and eventually he gets big enough to spawn his own little dinosaur minions. It's not balanced or refined, but there's something amazing about becoming the boss fight in a world that feels like I forgot to code the rules. Outside of the main characters, there's the Smarties, wide-eyed, idiot helper aliens who act both as comedic relief and the backbone of your base building. They've got huge heads, terrible posture, and a love for food, booze, and whatever giant weapon you're building them towards. You gather them up, protect them, and occasionally watch them get kidnapped, eaten, or sacrificed. It's grim, but it's hilarious. There are other creatures too, Reaper guards, Rippers, flying verms, Sonax, but enemy variety was clearly lower on the priority list. The real challenge in Giants isn't surviving the enemy, it's surviving the systems holding it all together. Originally, Giants was supposed to tell 3 separate stories, one for each of the playable races, but at some point during development, that changed. The final game stitches it all into a single sequential campaign, starting with Baz and the Macarians, then handing control over to Delphi, and finally ending with Kabuto. Each transition is bridged with cutscenes that introduce and wrap missions, helping turn the chaos into something resembling a narrative arc.
This is the brake, and this is the throttle. Okay, you can drive from here. I have a lot to think about right now.
The story kicks off with Baz, searching for his missing squad mates, Reg and Tell. After crash landing, you meet a Smarty named Timmy, who becomes your guide, introducing you to the world, the characters, and the fact that the Smarties are basically being terrorized by the Sea Reapers and their queen, Sappho. It plays out like a kind of sci-fi parody with the Magnificent Seven. Baz slowly reunites with the other Macarians, and leads a resistance effort to free the Smarties and push back against the Reaper rule. But things take a darker turn. In one of the more memorable cutscenes, Queen Sappho sacrifices Timmy to Kabuto. And the Smarty elder, Bajorzi, Timmy's grandfather, steps in as your new guide. With Bajorzi's help, Baz sets up a base and launches a full-scale counterattack. From here, the game switches over to Delphi's campaign. Delphi's story begins with training missions led by another Smarty named Jan, a samurai type who teaches her the abilities. Once you're up to speed, Delphi launches a solo assault on the Reaper stronghold, culminating in a boss fight against Sappho herself. But right before she dies, Sappho summons Kabuto to destroy the Smarties once and for all, except Kabuto doesn't listen. Instead, he eats her.
No. Go, go, go! Kabuto! No! No, Kabuto! Put me down!
That's when the final arc begins, and things get even weirder. In the closing stretch, Delphi transforms herself into a Kabuto-like creature, apparently in an effort to take on the original. You wander the island again, this time as Delphi Kabuto, hunting prey to grow larger until you're big enough for a one-on-one boss fight with the real deal. Delphi wins, but the game isn't done yet. It's a twist cutscene. Kabuto revives and turns Delphi back into a Sea Reaper, giving you one final mission where you return as Baz for the real final battle. When it's all over, the cast, Baz, Delphi, Bajorzi, and the rest of the mechs, fly off together to a place called Planet Majorca. It's not exactly emotional closure, but it's on brand for Giants, chaotic, funny, half-serious, and always slightly off balance.
Are you done? Right, so what's for supper?
Goodbye, Richie.
What the bloody hell's that?
Hello, Mummy. Hello, Daddy. I want you all to know I'm all right. And apart from all the fire and brimstone, it really isn't that bad here.
Hey, if you're enjoying the video and want to help preserve games like Giants, consider subbing. I break down overlooked, forgotten, and one-of-a-kind titles every week. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, you're already in the right place.
My wife cooks everything I eat. Oh my God, I forgot the wife. The Reaper gods kidnapped her the other day.
Right, look, I'm sorry about your wife, but we're looking for someone that looks like...
The story isn't tight or clean or even all that coherent. Characters vanish, arcs end suddenly, and the tone swings between parody, tragedy, and total nonsense. But under all the chaos, there's something kind of sincere about it. It's a world where everyone's fighting for a place to belong. Baz just wants to do his job, Delphi just wants to escape her past, and Kabuto, he just wants to be something. Even if he doesn't fully understand what. The game doesn't deep dive any of this, but it hints at more, and sometimes that's enough. The absurdity, the cutscene energy, the fact that you end the game flying off with a drunk Smarty and a half-redeemed Sea Witch, it's weirdly charming. Not because it's perfect, but because someone clearly cared, even if the game engine was falling apart while they wrote it. It's not a great story, but it's a great mess, and honestly, that's the part of what makes it unforgettable.
Money, plenty of these.
Baz, looks like some of our grenades.
Fresh exploding taters. I've been growing them since yesterday.
What a liar!
Giants came from a small team. In '97, 5 core members from the team that made MDK, Shiny Entertainment, including Nick Brody, Bob Stevenson, and Tim Williams, broke off to form their own studio, Planet Moon. They teamed up with engineer Scott Guest, and from the start, they weren't interested in playing it safe. Their first goal was making something fun, making something no one had before. That's exactly what Giants was supposed to be. Spacemen, sea witches, a giant monster, all in one engine, all in one game. Originally, they planned to ship it in late 1999, but things didn't go as planned. Their lead programmer, Andy Astor, was diagnosed with stage 4 mantle cell lymphoma that year, and that slowed development dramatically. To keep moving, they brought in 2 more programmers and another artist, but by that point, the tech landscape was moving fast, and they were trying to keep pace with it. They kept upgrading as they went, raising the bar on textures, rewriting parts of the engine to support newer NVIDIA cards. When they started, the game was targeting Voodoo 1. By the time they launched, they needed GeForce Series hardware just to run it. Most teams would have licensed a game engine to save time, but Planet Moon said no. The engines that were available back then couldn't do what they needed, so they built their own from scratch. They called it Amityville, and it supported Glide, OpenGL, and Direct3D. That engine let them build the lush, deformable terrain the game became known for. As for the campaign design, Planet Moon wanted a learning curve that felt natural. Each mission introduced new commands, one at a time, and gave you time to use them in a meaningful way. The controls were deliberately kept simple. Essential actions were mapped to a few keys, and they ran the layout through testing groups with over 25 players to make sure it felt right. Their AI goals were huge, too. They wanted enemies to dodge bullets, take cover, and react based on long-term combat planning. They even brought in Mark Fronmeyer, who worked on Tribes 2 to help them figure out the multiplayer side. Balance-wise, they didn't just tweak damage numbers. They tried to give each character type a completely different feel. At one point, Kabuto could bake mud into these mud shepherd units to defend his food supply. The Sea Reapers were supposed to be able to literally reshape the landscape, cutting channels into the ground, isolating areas with water. They ran out of time. Those features got scrapped. The Windows version finally launched on December 7, 2000, and was published by Interplay. They even made a special GeForce 3 version with added effects like real-time shadows, weather systems, and water reflections. You could only get it bundled with the card itself. Later, a Mac OS version was released, recoded with the Omni group to take advantage of the Mac's multi-core processing power. That one shipped on October 25, 2001. Multiplayer wasn't even included in the initial retail release. It had to be patched in afterward. Then came the PS2 port, and it shows. The PS2 version was handled by Digital Mayhem, a division of Interplay. They tried to keep the players updated with progress posts on IGN, but behind the scenes, it was rough. They had to compress the PC's visual effects in a much smaller space, and use Lightwave 3D to rework the models. Resolution took a massive hit, but character models actually gained more polygons on PS2, so the shapes were smoother even if everything was downgraded. They added a controller aim assist, redesigned the UI, and tried to tweak the Sea Reaper race segments to be more playable with controller. But the PS2 just couldn't handle multiplayer the same way as PC. They originally planned to keep it, but they dropped it. That version shipped on December 21, 2001, and while it technically worked, it never matched what the original PC build could do. They announced an Xbox port too, but that just never came out.
Yes, perfect.
I can't believe what you just did.
All under control, my child.
Right before Giants hit shelves in the US, Planet Moon ran into trouble with the ESRB. They'd been aiming for a teen rating to help with retail reach. Big stores like Walmart flat out refused to carry anything marked mature. So the team made a couple of quick edits. They changed the blood from red to green and put a bikini top on Delphi, who was originally topless in the game. It didn't matter. They still got slapped with a mature rating. After launch, Planet Moon quietly released a patch that turned the blood back to red, and PC players quickly figured out that deleting a single file would remove Delphi's top entirely. So in the end, both censorship changes were basically undone with a few clicks. Interplay tried to boost pre-orders with a bonus disc that added extra multiplayer maps, and in 2003, 3 years after release, they offered the full soundtrack if you bought the game directly from their website. That soundtrack had its own little saga. Originally, Interplay hired Mark Snow, the guy behind the X-Files music, but for whatever reason, the actual composition ended up going to Mark Morgan, known for Fallout, Planescape Torment, and eventually to Jeremy Soule, who finished the job when Morgan had to step away due to personal issues. Only Morgan and Soule are listed in the game's closing credits, and it was Soule who compiled the final release. At one point, Soule even offered to autograph the soundtrack CD for fans, but when he found out most people were just planning to pirate it off Napster, he pulled the offer entirely. It's the kind of side story that fits the game perfectly. Talented people doing cool work, only for it to get swallowed by timing, tech, and the internet being the internet. When Giants finally launched, it didn't land quietly. Critics immediately noticed how much it was trying to do, how it blended genres, shifted tones, and somehow packed 3 wildly different playstyles into one campaign. And even when it didn't fully work, reviewers respected the ambition. Outlets like Game Revolution and GameSpot actually liked the RTS elements. The base building and smarty herding should have been tedious. But they weren't. The simplicity worked in the game's favor. Even Troy Dunaway, who was Microsoft's head of game design at the time, said the light strategy mechanics didn't distract from the action, they enhanced it. It didn't feel like a clunky hybrid, it felt like a shooter with extra layers. Sci-Fi Weekly echoed that. They praised how the game's genres never really stepped on each other. Each race felt distinct, but nothing dragged down the pacing. That said, not everyone agreed. The Entertainment Depot pointed out that some missions force you to leave your base defenseless, so you'd go off to complete an objective and come back to rubble, meaning you'd have to rebuild everything from scratch. That kind of frustration built up fast, especially in longer missions. Visually though, people were blown away. The game was a technical showpiece at launch, with advanced features like hardware transform and lighting, bump mapping, and highly stylized environments. Action Trip said the graphics were so good, they assumed their card was doing things it physically couldn't. But even with all that tech, the game didn't run great. Multiple reviewers pointed out that even on recommended specs, the PC version struggled. Crashes, frame rate dips, and stutters were common, especially with everything turned up. So yeah, it looked amazing, but most people couldn't actually play it that way. If there's one part of Giants that everyone had something to say about, it was the AI. Some reviewers said the Allied AI handled itself pretty well most of the time. You just had to nudge it into action every now and then. But others didn't hold back. Firing Squad flat out called your teammates worthless and admitted they enjoyed leaving them to die just to watch it happen. They weren't much kinder to the enemies either, noting that opponents would run into obstacles, ignore nearby deaths, and generally act like they were stuck in a loop. IGN echoed that, pointing out how obvious the AI would be in combat. But Action Trip took a more optimistic stance. They said the enemies did okay, ducking for cover when injured, swarming your base, and at least trying to think ahead. Then there's the humor, probably the most memorable part of Giants for a lot of people. It's crude, bizarre, and totally self-aware. Most reviewers loved it. The game leaned into ridiculous cutscenes and absurd tone shifts without ever letting the comedy wear out its welcome. Firing Squad even said the jokes kept them going through the game's rough patches, and they felt the loss when that humor started fading toward the end. But not everyone was on board. Mac Guild and Macworld UK both thought the jokes came off childish and forced, like the game was trying too hard to be edgy. Even for the fans, the pacing became an issue. Reviewers called out how the game could drag, especially in missions that stretched a single idea too far. According to Action Trip, the game lacked that one intangible quality that made it stand out compared to contemporaries like MechWarrior 4, Sea Dogs, or American McGee's Alice. The technical issues definitely didn't help. Crashes were frequent, enough that Game Revolution accused Interplay of spending more time centering the game for retail than fixing it for bugs. Multiplayer was broken at launch, and even with patches, some players still couldn't connect. Those who could said it was fun, but the lack of low ping servers and consistent disconnects killed momentum. And worst of all, the PC version didn't even launch with an in-game save system. You had to beat entire missions in one go or start over. That decision also drove multiple reviews to call it flawed at a fundamental level. The PS2 version tried to clean some of this up. It added a proper save system and smoothed out a few frame drops. But most of the original problems were still there. Clunky AI, awkward mission design, and the occasional moment where enemies or projectiles just phase through the world. IGN said it looked average compared to PC, lower res, washed out colors, flatter textures, and while some animations were smoother, heavy combat scenes still dropped the frame really hard. Once you beat the campaign, that was it. No real replay value, just the memory of the madness. But despite all that, the game still got praise. Next Generation gave both versions, PC and PS2, 4 out of 5 stars. They called it brilliantly conceived, beautiful, and well made, even if it was rough around the edges. And the average score backed that up. Giants sat at an 85 on Metacritic and an 86.7 on Game Rankings, which for something that weird and broken is kind of incredible. But the sales told a different story. The Windows version sold poorly, despite the praise. The Mac version actually sold out, even with its smaller market base. And on PS2, it only moved 11,000 copies in the first 6 months. To compare, Shadow Hearts sold 51,000 in the same window. Max Payne sold 750,000. Still, reviewers didn't give up on Giants. It kept showing up on lists that deserve a sequel. It held a spot on PC Gamer UK's Top 100 as late as 2007. And in 2009, GameZone's Andrew Groan wrote a full retrospective, saying that Giants' blend of humor and action may have helped inspire games like Ratchet & Clank and Jak and Daxter. He believed the tone and creativity behind Giants left a mark, even if the sales never showed it.
Take it. I want to see you burn them all to a crisp. Come on!
There's something about Giants that just sticks with me. Even now, after finishing the PS2 version again, wrestling with its bugs, broken AI, and levels that barely hold together, I still came away thinking, this game matters. It's not just that it tried something big, it's that it tried everything. There are so many cool ideas packed into this game. Jetpacks that let you leap across alien terrain, magic systems that actually feel distinct, tactical base building, unit herding, open terrain exploration, and then out of nowhere, you're a Godzilla-sized monster eating people in mid-mission. And none of it feels half-baked in concept. The ambition is real. You can tell the devs cared. They weren't chasing trends, they were chasing something new, and that's rare. But Giants was also clearly built on borrowed time and duct tape. You feel it as the missions get looser, as the systems start to creep, as the world that once felt so full of life turns sparse and buggy and small. The island itself is beautiful, but hollow. There's a constant sense that the world wanted to be something more, that the engine couldn't hold the vision, that the team ran out of time before they ran out of ideas. And that's why I think about this game so much. Because what would it look like now, with modern hardware, a full dev cycle, and the freedom to really fill in the gaps? Imagine the same game rebuilt, not remade, just realized. More creatures, smarter AI, real scale, a multiplayer mode that works. A world that feels alive instead of stitched together from dream fragments. Imagine flying across the island as Baz with full physics and verticality. Imagine defending a real base with smart teammates and dynamic systems. Imagine Kabuto, really Kabuto, stomping across terrains that shift beneath him, buildings crumbling, enemies fleeing, scale finally matching the vision. That's the dream, right? It doesn't need to be cleaned up or sanitized. I don't want Giants made safer. I want it finished. Because as messy as the game is, as broken as it can be, it still left a mark. It made me laugh, it made me curious, it made me think about what games could be when nobody's telling you to follow the rules. And even now, decades later, that matters. Giant Citizen Kabuto isn't just another forgotten game. It's a case study in what happens when a vision outgrows its tools. It tried to be 3 games at once, run on an engine that was built from scratch, ship on platforms that could barely hold it, and still managed to tell a story that swings between comedy, tragedy, and chaos. It didn't get the recognition it deserved, and it didn't sell well, but it meant something, to the people who made it, and to the players like me who grew up with it. So today we're giving it a proper place in my archive, one more strange, broken, unforgettable title locked in my vault. If you've never played it, I don't blame you. It's hard to recommend. But if you ever do, you might come away feeling the same thing I did, that Giants was trying to tell us something about creativity, about risk, about how sometimes the mess is the message. Have you never played this before? Thank you all for watching. If you want to see more stories like this, more lost titles, cult classics, and overlooked greats, make sure to subscribe. We're preserving games' weirdest history one game at a time. And as always, I'll see y'all later.